Welcome to the Astro Lounge, a podcast that invites you to unwind, have a little fun, and engage in meaningful conversations with others in the astro community and beyond.
We're some astro babes turned astro besties who met at Astrology University. We believe in astrology that works with you and that your chart is completely special and unique. In this pod, we're going to have some fun with astro through games, discussions, special guests, and even more.
Hi, I'm Simona, a travel consultant turned astrologer. I now help people journey inward, serving as a guide towards deeper self-discovery, agency, and a more meaningful, wonder-filled life.
Hiya, I'm Kaia, an astrologer weaving the threads of my three passions together: theater, astrology, and witchcraft. All for the hopes of digging into these little cosmic winks for some doses of self-love and self-acceptance.
So sit back, relax, grab a cozy beverage,
and let's get cosmic in this Astro Lounge. Oh, hello again.
Oh, hello again. How are you?
I am good. I've almost finished my coffee. It takes me forever to finish a coffee. It's called a Bananas Foster. You ever had one of those before?
I have, yes.
Really?
Yum, yes.
Yeah.
I love taking my time with coffee and just kind of just sipping it. Also in line with this Taurus energy that we're in right now.
Yes, it is. So as you might have listened to the previous episode before this, we were chatting about aspects. And our original plan, we got very Sun Jupiter about it. We were like, we're going to discuss aspects, Sun Jupiter and the Moon and Saturn. But we had such a delightful time just talking about the overview of aspects that we decided to give you all an extra little treat and chop up these episodes.
Yeah, so we figured we'd let you guys kind of digest that information before we go more in depth, because we could go on and on and on and on, but at least have a little bit of a reprieve. So today we are going, for this episode, we're going to go ahead now and take what we were discussing on the last one and go through using, in this case, the Sun and Jupiter, and then Moon, Saturn. But we're going to start with the Sun and Jupiter and kind of feel into how these planets might relate to each other within different relationships or different aspects to each other.
I have to say, I will get to this. I feel like we Moon, Saturn, or Sun, Jupiter. So that's very funny. So yes. Okay. So Sun, Jupiter, we're going to talk about the archetypal quality of this aspect. And as we chat, we're going to throw in some of the aspects here and there to be like, how might it feel if it was in a sextile? Or how could it feel if it was in opposition? And, what's interesting about aspects is that aspects don't change the motivation of the planets, right? So Sun, Jupiter are still doing their Sun, Jupiter things. It's just maybe how they're talking and going about it that might be modified by the aspects. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. It's always the archetypal energy is the archetypal energy, but how they're dancing together will shift. And but key is first and foremost the planets.
Yeah.
Who are they? What are they driving? What energy do they give off? And of course, the sign that it's in is going to filter that energy through the sign. So that's going to, but really, first of all, what is the Jupiter energy? What is the solar energy? What does that represent in our psyche?
Yes. And God, these are two big ones.
Yes. And literally, Jupiter, literally the gas giant, right? And the sun is, our central to us, central organizing principle in our psyche. So these are big ones.
These are big ones.
We chose to start with Sun Jupiter and then to do Moon Saturn because these are very different. Like the Sun Jupiter technically might seem like they go more easily together. So, if they're in a square relationship that we were talking about, how that can be tense, that might feel a little bit different than, let's say, the Moon Saturn in like a easeful relationship. So we just chose these because they're very different qualities, just to kind of add some nuance to this.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So do we want to kind of chat about the Sun and Jupiter like briefly?
Just a quick overview. Yeah, exactly. We did an episode on just the Sun, and eventually we'll do one on Jupiter. And I don't know how brief we can be when we're embodying, we're bringing in Jupiter. We might go
True.
on a bit. But yes, let's kind of give an overview of their significance, like their
Awesome.
symbolic, what they mean.
Okay.
And then we can start going through the aspects.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got the sun. The
Yes.
sun is that solar principle in us. And as we chatted in our other episode, definitely check it out because that's a whole planetary series. The sun is the organizing principle of the psyche, aka the organizing principle of the solar system. It's obviously an incredibly central piece in your chart. And with that, the sun and the sun sign, the house it's in, all the aspects to it are all part of a journey. The sun is a very questing, journeying quality. It's a very yang. It can be very external. You're kind of always learning how to become your sun sign, right? You're building the qualities. Let's say you're a Virgo sun. You're really learning about Virgo and how this is making your solar light shine. Wherever we have the sun, we kind of want to shine. We might be recognized for something. We're really going through, just to harp it on it, the hero's journey is just a really helpful way to describe
Yes.
it. It's very much the self-actualization process. It's a lot of about the ego, about the self, right? This is solar bright energy.
Yes, it's what the essence that we're developing. It's like our essence, our core
Yeah,
essence. And I
yeah.
think of it like a piece of music has all these different parts, but even when you
Oh,
move things around, there's a quality that remains that piece of music that's recognizable, even if it's shifting, like changing keys or changing instruments or having variations. There's a quality that's there. And I feel like that's really
um,
our sun, our solar essence.
I'm gonna steal that.
You
That's I've
know,
never heard that before. Are you kidding me? That's
I
beautiful.
can I have a background music, so I think a lot from that kind of
I
music.
know.
And now I like to use
But
music
that's
metaphors.
so helpful. Thank you. Because I'm like,
Oh,
yes, 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 yes. Okay, I'm gonna steal that. Sorry.
well, I loved all that you said. You already said all these beautiful things. I was just
Oh,
adding a little
please.
thing to it. But that's really what you mentioned, like our ego, and we're
Yeah,
developing, that core quality, and we want that to shine out and all of that. So that's just
yeah,
it's our vitality, our sense of purpose, all these things. Just a little
yeah,
overview of the sun.
yeah.
And then we have Jupiter.
And then we have Jupiter. And so for example, all that stuff we just about said about the sun, if there are planets touching, so that's aspecting the sun, that is going to really come up in your sun journey. So if Jupiter is chatting to the sun, we do need to look at Jupiter and see what sign is it in, what's the house it in, what house is it in, what is it saying to us? And Jupiter is this is big, big, buoyant. It is the gas giant energy. Jupiter is the archetypal realms. We love Jupiter.
We
We
love, as
love
two
it.
Jupiter and Leos,
Yes,
we love our
we love
Jupiter
it.
at the top of our chart. We
Hey,
love Jupiter.
we love
Yeah.
it. Right? Because Jupiter is where a lot of times you can hold great it talks like your faith in life and meaning and purpose and big goals and dreams. And the sun is also really about like goals and moving. And so you're already kind of starting to see like I'm kind of like moving, like there's a bigness
Yes.
here, right? And
Yes.
sun Jupiter people might be very like to have a sense of meaning infused in their self-actualization process. There's a little bit of an exploring, a questing. This is large, big visions because Jupiter in just itself is what is the potential here? What is the opportunity? Where can I take some risk? What's the adventure? What Jupiter always wants to expand whatever it touches, and it can also bring excess to whatever it touches as well.
Yes. And as you were talking, it's
Yeah.
interesting. We were talking about how some planets have more of a little bit of similar qualities. And, you brought that sense of purpose, that solar purpose, and that sense of meaning with
Yeah.
Jupiter. There's like something that they go together in that. But yeah, there's a grandness, sometimes a
Yeah.
grandiosity, with Jupiter, the sun, people who have this, in relationship. Um, on the plus side, there can be this beautiful, radiant leadership energy that is expansive and inspires, and that's part of almost their sense of who they are. On the more shadow side, it can be this kind of
Yeah.
like pride that's so magnified, this kind of sense of like, I am the guru
Oh
or
yeah.
something. There's lots of
Yeah.
different ways. So, but, we just kind of started touching on how they kind of blend together. But I love everything you said about Jupiter, meaning and having kind of this sense of, philosophy and traveling
Yeah,
and expanding your perspective through going out and seeing what else is beyond your known experience.
exactly. Yeah, and I do have this contact in my chart, and meaning is it's like that Jupiter stuff just always feels fundamental to the solar process, and it's just like always kind of like seeing like having like great visions and great ideas, and sometimes they seem kind of over the top because Jupiter can also, it can exaggerate, it can go too big, it can be too much, and I will say, especially having that, and I have it in the square. So here's an example of that: is sometimes high Jupiter people, and then once you add the sun there can be great expectations, and we put a lot of pressure on that. I have it in the square. I can put a lot of like pressure on these big expectations and ideas and visions, which means it can deflate sometimes pretty quickly. But what I'm grateful for in this aspect, even with the square, and maybe particularly because there's a square and there's some tension, right? It's Taurus and Leo for me. And it's fixed. So there's some tension here. There's some obstacles. There's some stressors, but there's also giving me some stressor to like move and to create action. And yeah, it can deflate pretty easily. Like I'll be very vulnerable about that. But there can sometimes be a resilience, or like, okay, let's go again. Like, I mean, there are other parts of my chart that are different too, but there can be an opportunity for tapping into resilience, or being like, you know what, I have a faith in life, I have a faith in the meaning of life, and that's what's going to keep me going. And that's what usually gets me back up when I fall down so hard, is that I'm like, oh, right. And I feel like, even though it's a square, and again, other parts of the charts, and I don't take it for granted that there can be like an optimism that can be tapped into here.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
experience. And I love that kind of buoyancy that Jupiter can bring, even if it's a square, you might have to work at reminding
Oh yeah.
yourself like that you've got that access to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's there for you, right?
It
And so
is.
I'm curious, sometimes do you feel that, it's operating within yourself, this kind of sense, like maybe this kind of friction between your solar, and do you feel it comes from outside sometimes too, where maybe like us,
Yeah.
and if so, is it, do you sometimes feel like Jupiter and Leo enthusiasm, right? But then maybe then a solar person maybe comes, how,
Yeah.
and this might be a difficult question, but I know
No,
we
go
had
for
talked
it.
a little bit about how the square can operate internally, externally. So I'm just wondering how you've experienced that. And that's a tough question. I mean, maybe you don't have
No,
that.
I love that question. Yes, because sometimes I feel like the Jupiter goes so high, it goes so high, it goes so big. Like I was actually talking to my mom about it, because I'm always she's always like, "What's an aspect?" So I'm giving her some information. I'm telling her a little bit about this one in particular, because I'm like, "Oh, we're going to chat about this," and she was like, "Even as a kid, you would hold very high expectations, and it could be pretty deflated pretty quickly." And I was like, "Oh God!" And like it's a little, it is like, I know it's not embarrassing, but I feel like vulnerable and embarrassing admitting that a
Sure,
little
it's
bit, right?
vulnerable to talk about our own things for for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so that means like, but I want to keep my Jupiter alive and give it meaning. And I know it, honestly, it can, in a weird way, it can also be validating knowing that, like, oh, sometimes that's my sun Jupiter just going really big and extreme. And seeing like the way it's placed in my chart, I can see sometimes when I'm experiencing the deflation from other people who are like kind of tapping into the solar part and like, ugh. And when the solar part is kind of down, sometimes the Jupiter is like, I have nowhere to like chat to or go off of. So yes,
Really interesting.
yes,
Thank you for sharing that. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
And that, helps to kind of ground it in our own lived experiences. People can think about like,
Mm-hmm.
if you have like a square between the sun and Jupiter, like how are you working with this kind of
Oh yeah.
aspect of creative tension? Like going
Mm-hmm.
back on our talk the last episode about being an aspect of creative tension, it brings friction, but it also can be amazingly powerful and motivating and motivating and have something creative come out of that. And I'm sure a lot of creativity, because you're a very creative person, has come
Oh,
from, especially with the sun having to do with also
yeah.
creativity and as an archetype, coming
Yeah.
with Jupiter, like having these ideas that kind of motivate you to take action. And even it might be maybe those doubts come in or whatnot, that deflation, but
Oh,
then
yeah.
work with it. What can come to life? What can be manifested?
Well, yes. And something you said earlier, which can be a thing with the Sun Jupiter contact, is like hmm, the idea of kind of playing the guru or like a godlike figure, because Jupiter can be kind of the guru and the like, I know all. And this is also the sun. So, particularly, I think in the oppositions and squares, one has to be mindful of that, of when is the overconfidence reaching a level of excess, and are we overcompensating for something? Because sometimes that's why we're being so loud and exuberant and whatnot, because there's a lot of self-doubt and whatnot in here,
Yes.
right? Yes,
It,
yes, yes. And the high
it's not real confidence.
it's not real
Yes.
confidence always. And
Yeah.
what's funny is one of my biggest fears about the success of stuff is not wanting to seem like a guru. And now I'm really putting that into play.
Well, that's really interesting. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. There's that kind of like, oh no, if I show up and share these things. And so maybe that's
Yeah,
its own kind of friction here. It's
it
like there's an
is.
awareness of the potential. You've got that
Yeah.
awareness of how one's ego can it can inflate, right? In general, all of
Oh, yeah.
us, right? And so having that awareness might be part of the tension. Like, I don't want that, but you still want
Yes.
to honor both planets because no matter how these planets are dancing, every planet wants to be honored. And if we try
They
to
do.
push one away or not work with it, it's going to get louder. It's going to act up in
Oh my
less
God. Yeah.
constructive ways. So I love that
Yeah.
you brought that up. And as you're talking about overconfidence, one word that really comes to mind with the sun Jupiter, if it's acting more shadowy, is hubris. It's like the ultimate planetary pairing of like,
Yeah.
I got this, I have no limits, I can go
Yes.
on. And then it gets, that's one word. But it
Mhm.
also when
Yeah.
operating, it's such a beautiful, I mean, it can be such a warm, uplifting. It's the
Hmm.
sun with Jupiter and
Yeah.
uplifting. And if it's working, let's take, for example, a trine or a sextile that might be a little bit easier
Hmm.
to work with. And of course, you can have you can mine this, like you were saying, even with a square or an opposition. But if it's working well, there might be this kind of sense of like stepping into one's light and doing it in a way that feels very comfortable for you, for
Yeah.
one, and like being able to, lift people up and inspire and stand up there and not have these kind of like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. I mean, it might just like
Yeah.
flow in a way that's very natural. And if it's like, let's say, a natural talent, like in a trine, that
Hmm.
that leadership, people, there might be a sense of charisma because oftentimes we think of the sun can be
Oh, yeah.
charismatic, also Venus, but with Jupiter, and there could be a lot of success in that and in taking on those roles and reaching a large audience, with Jupiter, being able to reach people, lift them up, those kinds of
Yeah.
things. Or
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, all
That's
those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's curious. I wonder if someone who has like the trans sextiles, maybe if those fears are a little bit more alleviated because it is maybe potentially it's just like flowing a little bit more, right? And there isn't like I feel like there might be less, and hey, there could be with the trine, but there could be less opportunity to be so excessive with certain parts of the shadowy things. Like, and I could speak as one with the square, like, just trying your limits, testing your limits. There's a little bit of a risk taking here because you're like, I think I can get away with this, or like there could be some element of success. So I'm just gonna like try really, really big. Oh, whoopsies, like there could be a
Yeah.
little bit of that. And then with opposition, that's a fascinating one to think about. Like, is it who is kind of vacillating between Sun and Jupiter? Is it a father figure, a paternal figure? Because the Sun also speaks to father figures, and I won't go into huge detail, but it is so. And just I'll be vulnerable, not on good terms with my dad. So I was like, when I was kind of doing research about this, because he is a very hubris, the egotism, the arrogance is like so big, so big that
It's
I was like,
prominent.
it's it's probably, and it's always been said about him and he's very successful in his field, and so it's just such an interesting, this is where aspects are so fascinating, because I'm like, oh, this is kind of chatting about my father, it feels weird to say, and my experience of him, and then also bringing up fears about what I don't want to be in my success and leadership too.
It's so
So
fast. It's beautiful to think about.
I know it gives so much information. And again, like that's where aspects are also fascinating because the sun, it will help to describe these stories with authority figures or leadership figures, dad, paternal figures. So keep that in mind too. You know, it's about you, and it might also be chatting about other stuff in your life too.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I wonder,
Mm.
you were saying maybe with the square excess might be more. And I also
Yeah.
wonder because we can look at it too, because I've always contemplated, like I always like to contemplate the trine, the square, and these kind of things. But then I wonder with the trine when things are just flowing, if you might
I
have
know.
access to too much excess too, but the difference might be that you don't feel, or it might not
Yeah.
be as obvious of a, like maybe the excess with the square might result in a different kind of consequence. Maybe the try, like you're overdoing it
Yeah.
somehow. It may not be so great for you, but maybe there's like helpers, or because sometimes you hear with it,
Yeah.
especially with these two planets in a trine relationship, sometimes getting away with things that maybe people would not normally get away with. And you're like, what are you kidding me? How is this possible? Why does this person keep getting away with everything? And it's like, oh, well, it's working for them. And maybe, on a soul level, it could be something entirely different, but on this earthly plane, so
Exactly.
I wonder, like, if those, with the trine, think of it like the faucet, these energies are flowing.
Ugh,
Maybe this is someone that's really like has a lot of hubris and overconfidence, but like people is
yeah.
also charismatic and seems to like get away with a lot of things. Like
Uh,
maybe the square, there would be more
yeah.
of like friction with the audience, with other people, like in when trying to have I don't know, it's just like a question, right?
That's a great question because also with this contact, sometimes we see people who are very interested in politics or
Yes.
leadership positions.
Yes,
So of
yes. And
course,
being on a platform and having these kind of,
yeah,
we
yeah,
think of Jupiter with like a big picture worldview. So politics,
yeah,
religion, all those things fall under its
all of
domain.
it, all of it. So that's, I think, yeah, if you have this contact, it's like pride inherently isn't a negative thing, but it is definitely the pride cometh before the fall signature. And like,
Yes.
and the fact that for me, like Jupiter's in Leo, right? So it's like, oof, that's a big shadow part to just really be mindful. And then how much are you letting it holding you back too? So it's just a constant dialogue with that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
also thinking of the opposition and the types of people you might draw in, like you were talking
Mhm.
about. I can imagine someone maybe on their solar quest and maybe trying to own a leadership role or really stand out. And then they attract people that are maybe very successful or very like
Oh yeah.
exuberant and very much standing and in that. And maybe there's a draw to that. And it's like trying to help one's own ego
Yeah.
development and shine out. But maybe there's some
Oh, that's
tension there.
lovely.
Maybe that partner's always taking up all the space depending on where the sun, I mean, there's so
Right.
many nuances because the sun can
Right.
also take up space, but it's like,
I know
where is
these
it in
guys.
your chart and
Oh my
how are they
god.
talking to each other, right?
These two bodies are taking up so much space, and they're like, I want all the freedom and space to be me. And you're like,
Yes,
okay,
gonna
Jesus,
be me. Yeah.
hey, it's very
But I
big.
have the truth, and this is what it
Yes,
is.
I have the truth. And I love what
Right.
you said there because I could also see something clicked in my brain when you're speaking. Like, yeah, like you're saying, like helpers and people coming into like, and just like Jupiter's philosophy too, religion, whatnot. So things like that really coming in to help that solar grow because again
Yes.
Jupiter does want you to grow and it wants you to expand your horizons and your limits and wants you to
Right.
give a little bit of a risk. So that's some of the also the great stuff. It's like Jupiter is not the planet where we're figuring out all the details. No, like when I'm like,
Nope.
yeah, I'm doing all these things, I'm like, I don't know the details. It's not
But I'm
that.
just doing it. I've got the
No,
vision.
I'm just doing the vision. It's the vision. And
Yeah.
like, it's particularly for some Jupiter people, it's like to incorporate that into your journey can be so helpful. And I think in whatever aspect configuration you have.
I love that you brought up like the just even thinking of like expanding out, right? And
Mhm.
thinking like teachers and mentors, those are all
Yeah.
Jupiterian figures. And if you
Yeah.
think of the opposition, it's like trying to pull us out of our bubble and maybe
Oh,
expand and like look at it from this other perspective, right? And
yeah.
it can feel like really attractive, like wow, but also like difficult if you're used to seeing it from your perspective only. So those are just some thoughts. Did you want
God.
to think, I mean,
I know. I'm trying to think.
like
Oh, yes. Like just under this aspect, sometimes aspects can also show just like maybe we've talked a little bit about it already, but various interests or fields or vocations can come up, and so it's not uncommon necessarily to see like traveling,
yes.
law, education, religion, philosophy, as we said, and yeah, and just even if it's not external travel, travel of the mind, travel of meaning, something, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I think I'm just kind of looking over some of my notes here, but I
Travel is
think,
great. No, it's great
yeah,
because even like literal or inwardly, but let's just say even literal, you're literally stepping out of your bubble. And as if someone's
yeah,
hero's journey is linked to Jupiter, it could be a lot about that one's growth is happening through traveling abroad and
yeah,
expanding one's perspective. And that's part of their solar journey. And I love that what
yeah,
you said at the beginning of this, that if something is an aspect to your sun, in order to develop your sun, you're really going to have to relate to these planets in a very, you have to. It's
yeah,
part of the
yeah.
assignment. But anyways, maybe like
Oh,
yes, go ahead.
oh, sorry.
No,
I thought of
please.
one. I thought of one
Yes.
thing that I think has been really helpful for Sun Jupiter stuff, especially when you're because the pride, the ego, the excess of it could be a thing. I think practicing gratitude is just so fundamental because it also taps into the generous side of the Sun Jupiter. And again, sometimes, and
Yes.
I've experienced this being excessively generous, but I'm like, whatever, like that's definitely a thing. But there's room for that gratitude as well. And I just think, I mean, it's been very helpful for me personally. And it's something I do like literally every night. And I think it's just a nice way because of when that Sun Jupiter can deflate a little bit, because it will, and that's okay. Because sometimes it needs space to fall and then get back up again. It's gonna happen. It's okay, particularly squares, oppositions, but that gratitude piece will like kind of bring you back to that faith in life, to the meaning. So I think if you have a Sun Jupiter contact, just finding, okay, what is it that I can like hold on to and come back to for meaning and faith in life? Because at least for me, that's been like that's fundamental, you know?
That's beautiful. I love gratitude and generosity because
Yeah.
both the sun and Jupiter are associated with generosity, the sun giving
Yeah.
of itself, the warmth out, radiating out. It's a life
Yeah.
force, right? But and Jupiter, we think back into like Greek mythology, like it was so important to be Jupiter. Zeus was really preoccupied with, not that I'm
Yeah.
an expert at all with
Right.
mythology. That's our dear friend Rachel Hicks's
Yes, it is.
expertise, right? But the idea of like generosity was really important. Those were certain
Yeah.
things like very important. And so tapping into that when you do feel deflated, being able to do those kind of rituals of like
Yeah.
gratitude journals or whatnot, that's beautiful. And it
Yeah.
made me think of Jupiter. You see, now we think we're done and like more things
I know.
come out, right?
So
But
Jupiter.
Jupiter can have this element of theater and ritual
Oh
and
yeah.
making things bigger. And I think like sometimes maybe if we're trying to develop the self, sometimes doing these kind of rituals or things and
Yeah.
making things bigger and theatrical to really kind of find yourself through
Yes.
that. There can be something that awakens in that process.
Oh my God. I could not agree more because that literally yes, 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 yes. Like that feels very needed for this contact.
And you're a
Yeah.
theater person. I mean, you're an
Yeah.
actress. And so like
Yes.
I'm wondering
Yes.
how that has fueled your son, because
Oh
it's
yeah.
not just like a career, it's like also part of just like
Yeah.
what vitalizes you, right? And like to have those
Yeah.
two planets in aspect to each other.
I think it's been super helpful, and I think actually the square energy has been helpful because it's like you got to put like work into it and be like, okay, there are challenges there, but it's so fucking worth it, when it does go into flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Ah,
Well,
well, this is
beautiful.
exciting.
That's fun. So yes, if you guys have Sun Jupiter contacts out there and you can kind of look up and see what aspect you have and kind of
Yeah.
contemplate how those planetary energetics might be working. This is again, we didn't we could go on and on and on, but just as like a
Yeah.
place to start. And maybe now, what do you think? We now do kind of look at what maybe Moon Saturn would look like, which is
I
very,
feel
very
up for it.
different.
Yeah.
Very,
How do you
very
feel?
different. I feel up for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go
Okay.
for it.
Let's
Yeah.
do it. Yes. Awesome. So moon, we were talking all about the solar energy. It's outwards, it's external, blah, blah. The moon is here. It's in our heart. Honestly, I feel like our gut, our second heart, right? And the moon is our feelings and our emotions, our moods. Yes. It's how we experience nurturance, how we might nurture. It's very deep, emotional. It can kick up a lot of nostalgia and memories and childhood and parents and all that comes with that. Very much our fundamental building blocks of our emotional foundational system. So just like a chill energy
It's like a chill energy. I
side,
know.
you know, and then the whatever sign the moon is in will give you. We'll go, of course, more into detail about this in our other episode, but the moon and sign gives you a little bit more information about what could be helpful in like really soothing and nurturing yourself. And of course, the house it's in will give extra info too.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful overview of the moon. And it's really kind of our emotional imprints that are let, like in childhood, we have these emotional memories. Like you think of Mercury
Yeah.
being like memory, like memorization and memorizing facts. The moon holds memory through the emotional lens. And so it really
Ooh.
shapes our future because it's like all those emotions that are made in childhood, those like leave an imprint. And so the moon is very affiliated with that, associated with that as well.
That was beautiful, and I so many things I want to steal from you. Sorry, Sun Jupiter.
I've been stealing things from you left and right.
No, that
So
was the way you just said that. Like you were dropping wisdoms today. My God, that
I
was
don't know about that, but I'm
yes,
feeling the moon. Feeling the moon
yes.
right
But
now.
it's but yes, like I just love what you. I can't. I'm gonna go back and like literally write that down because the way you described like and how it shapes because that then also takes us to Saturn. I just wanted to highlight that for people. Really listen to what Simona was saying about the moon there. Anyways,
Oh, because earlier, we had before we even got on this conversation, we had a little chit chat, and I think you had said something about how the moon and Saturn are actually related by this kind of wanting this kind of sense of security or structure.
yeah,
But I was just thinking of the shaping, like you just said, you brought
yes,
it to Saturn because Saturn is like shaping of reality. So they're kind of, whatever memories were forged at a younger age are going to kind of show up in our start to kind of create part of our reality, right? So just
yes.
as we want to talk a little bit about Saturn now as the reality principle.
Yeah, hey Saturn.
Hey, Saturn.
Saturn is reality. Saturn is the planet of hey, wake up. We're in the real world right now. We're grounded. We're in the Earth. We're tangible. This is not Neptune. This is Saturn,
The
and
real
Saturn.
world of the earthly existence, right?
That,
Neptune might argue that there's a bigger reality,
so
but
true.
our
Thank you.
no, no, I'm just thinking, there's so many ways to look at reality too, but
That's
Saturn's like
so
the
true.
obvious reality, right?
The obvious reality. Yeah, Neptune's like, excuse me, what do you think you know what you don't know? And Saturn's like, okay, that's hilarious. Yes, Saturn is about this earthly reality and the restrictions and the limits of this reality. It is the planet of no restriction, denial, barriers, and that can sound a little, whew, but actually it doesn't have to be, right? Because we can really love responsibilities and limits and no's and delays, but it is a planet, whatever it touches. So when it touches the moon, Saturn might add a sense of hesitation, of a no, of a delay, of a constriction or a restriction, sometimes a somberness, sometimes a responsibility. Whatever Saturn touches, it has that stuff, but there's also like a real like ability to like ground it down, be solid, be real in it too. So again, it's on black and white, but that's just a little bit of that.
That's beautiful. And I think of, when we think of Saturn and heaviness and the weight and the responsibility and the no, it's like, if we ever try, you can have that vision, right? But if you ever try to make that vision real, it's a lot of work and it's not easy and it takes
Yeah.
and there's consequences to actions. And so if we're thinking of like
Mm.
with the moon in childhood, Saturn's going to be like, don't touch that, don't do that, don't do,
Oh
because there's like,
yeah.
there's also like,
Hmm.
It's not always coming from a bad place, right? There's this
No.
sense of like there's meaningful limits. That's what keeps us alive. If we don't honor the reality that we are
Yeah.
part of, we are going to find ourselves dead. That Saturn's pretty much, I mean, that's very like Saturnian statement. you know, if you
Yeah.
jump into this situation and you don't have a meaningful limit, you might die. That's very Saturn, right? But I think some of my Scorpio planets
Love
are
it.
also talking, but anyway, gonna
Love
go
that.
really intense here. But Saturn, yeah, it's recognizing that, there are things that are not easy about being in an earthly body.
Mm.
And so there's that sense, if we have the moon now with Saturn growing up, there's a
Yeah.
lot of ways this can express. And it can also, you talked about the sun being paternal figure. Often Saturn also carries that association with authority figures, father figures. How was that in our life, right? How was that
Mm.
operating what were our authority figures like, right? So Moon Saturn together, there can be this sense in childhood of there's a weight, maybe at a very young age, maybe
Yeah.
growing up, having to grow up fast, maybe feeling that sense of, emotional reserve and caution because, emotions are not really the realm of Saturn. They're kind of elusive and they're not, sometimes Saturn wants to control and have things structured, and emotions are not structured. Emotions are just, I don't like using the word irrational because it sounds like
Right.
bad the
Right.
way we've come to mean irrational, but they're not ration. They're not
Yeah.
operating from that place. And so, if you're someone that has, let's say, the moon Saturn together, like there can be a
Yeah.
sense of like every time you're feeling an emotion, maybe you also are guarded with that, or
Mm.
maybe it's a lifetime because Saturn things evolve over time. It's a lifetime of getting more in touch with those feelings and honoring them and knowing who to trust and to be safe to express it, not always walling up,
Yeah.
things like that. But sometimes there's this experience of having, no matter how it's aspected in your chart, there could be this sense of emotional reserve or having challenges if it's in a hard aspect in expressing your emotions or feeling
Yeah.
safe enough to do so. But both Saturn and the moon do want safety, but from a different way, from a different perspective. Saturn's more like a structural, like, hey, if we build these solid things and
Mm.
these things are in place and we have the material things under control, we're going to be okay. And the moon's like, well, I kind of want to know that I have a safe place to fall,
Yeah.
to feel safe on that level, on that emotional level, to nurture myself and know I have a soft place to go,
Mm.
So anyways, I'm
God,
going on and on, but
that's beautiful. No, no, no. I was tuned into you. Like that was such a great way of describing it because yeah, they both crave the moon and Saturn crave security. And I think consistency in a way, because like the consistency of like an emotional support, the consistency of home. And like I'm maybe this has been talked about before, but kind of when you were speaking, the archetype Cancer and Capricorn kind of came into my mind here a little
Right.
bit, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, you've got the Cancer is ruled by the moon and
Yeah,
Saturn. I mean, Capricorn's ruled by Saturn and
yeah,
they're opposite signs. And so they're the
literally.
parental access. And so there's really that kind of, there is that shared quality, even though it's coming
Yeah.
at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. It just felt very like that access was really present in my mind. And yeah, like there, as you said, like Saturn is also some images and visuals are like walls and fortresses and castles, protection. There's a lot of
Yes.
protection here. A walled up, bricks, stones, and not saying that you would be like stony and cold in your personality. No, you could be the most pleasant person ever. It's more, I think, like having some of the work here might be, as you were saying, like really learning what am I feeling and how can I express it? Because maybe I didn't feel safe, unfortunately, maybe in my early
Yeah.
childhood, there was a restriction of that, of conditional love. Maybe love felt a little bit more, or unconditional, sorry. Love felt a little bit more conditional, or it
Yes.
wasn't always immediately secure or safe or there. It also, as I was doing my research, what was really coming to my mind was like older siblings or parentifications and just like the parentified child. And I have a lot of friends who have that story in their life and the stuff they're kind of having to work out now, the reparenting, a lot of that was coming to the forefront as I was kind of just thinking about this archetype. Um
Yes. That's
yeah,
right.
right? And so it's interesting. It's like having to be sometimes a little bit older than you maybe should have had to be, but then you didn't necessarily maybe get the space and time to get your whole emotional processing years. So there,
The maturity was like just kind of
yeah,
skipped over the process, and you're just like, I
yeah,
gotta whatever you have to do,
gotta,
provide or take care of my
yes,
younger siblings because my
yeah,
parents were or my
yeah,
they were unavailable in some way, whether
yeah,
emotionally or literally. Yeah, there's that
yes,
kind of
exactly.
weight. And all of a
The
sudden, I
weight.
love that you said reparent. Yeah, and you have to find a way to tap into that
Yeah,
and find your own
yeah,
sense of how can you nurture yourself and
yeah.
release that child that never got
I
to have
know.
that experience or that process, because that can be one's
Oh,
experience.
yeah. I think this is quite can be quite a sensitive contact because it is the moon and it's Saturn. And Saturn can bring up those excuse me, fears and doubts and hesitation, but and also Saturn will reward the work you put into it. So like if you're very aware of this contact, it could be extremely useful. And then something you've actually said quite a bit about Saturn that has stayed with me is that Saturn can also sometimes although it can heavily restrict things, sometimes it's like, and then it goes to the opposite end and it puts excess into it. So like it also on the flip side makes me think of a person holding this contact who might be like over trying to like over correct and over excess and emotions and needing this and needing this love and needing that relationship and I need the home and family because it'll make me like this will make me feel safe and secure, right?
Well, I'm thinking of like a Saturn in Cancer, for example,
Oh
like you
yeah.
can overdo or
Yeah.
underdo, right? Like the sign you can either completely restrict or maybe you're just having trouble and you're going the other way with it. And then let's
Yeah.
say it's Saturn Cancer with the moon. So we've got that quality. The moon is now kind of like, while Saturn is the planet further away and we think Saturn has the upper hand, sometimes we think of it that way. The moon,
Yeah.
if it's with the moon and the moon is ruling Saturn, maybe those emotions have the, how are, there's a challenge there, but it
Yeah.
might not be in the way that we're always thinking. It might not be, it might be overdoing that feeling
Mhm.
and and trying to find,
Yeah.
a way. There's so many emotions and trying to find a way to structure it, and that might be a challenge there. But I was also thinking,
Exactly.
ways that those can often work really well together is, let's say they're in a trine relationship and there's a
Mm,
nice flow. It's still work. Saturn is still work, but it might be
yeah,
like, this feels really good. And I think of moon, also the body, like the body, what we do to nurture our body. And
yeah,
maybe this is someone that has no problem like taking care of themselves
mhm,
and structuring and having discipline and feeding and taking care of themselves. Maybe just like
yeah,
this comes naturally. And while you're still doing the Saturn work, it's not all this resistance like, oh, I don't want to, or this is hard, or I feel limitation. You just kind of do it,
yeah. You
you
just gotta
know,
do it.
kind of do it. Like you carry the,
Yeah,
like this is, or if it's a burden or whatever it is, it maybe doesn't
yeah.
feel, it's like, well, this is what it is, you know?
Well, I mean, talk about the potential for someone who could be very reliable and structured and dependable, or let's say taking some of their early child wounds and maybe they do start a family, however that looks and feels to them, and they're kind of um healing some of those wounds by being the parent they never got to receive or experience, right? And that could be healing in its own self too. And like, so there could be actually quite a safe structure there within themselves that they've made. Or it could be, I was also thinking about this, like maybe particularly the trans or sextiles, like, like I had as a single mom and stuff. So I was kind of thinking about like the single mom who's like really working hard and maybe she's not around as much, but there's still a lovely relationship between the mom.
Yes.
She was just having to like carry a lot of responsibilities, but
Beautiful.
but the relationship might still be there too.
I love that example, Kaya. That is, what a beautiful example because the moon is how we experience our mother as well, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, thinking about it, maybe you experienced her as having to carry a lot of weight, but still being there for you in a sense of emotion. There's still that feeling, even if
Yeah.
physically sometimes maybe she was somewhere else or whatever, maybe you didn't feel that lack. You didn't
Right.
experience it as a lack or
Yeah.
whatnot, which is but you witnessed what she had to do and it had a positive impact on you
Yeah.
or you experienced it as a positive impact. So that's really such a beautiful example. And I think I often hear with Moon Saturn people, they can be often very likable. I think
Oh
in
yeah.
reading some of this stuff, but also, with certain clients, there can sometimes be not quite Libra, but Libra wants to be wants to please and be
Yeah.
harmonious. Well, this is a little bit different, but like there can be, if there's a fear of letting people down, of expectations, and there's that like
Yeah.
inner child there, that there's a sense of really working really hard to make sure that you're not displeasing, or you're not letting down people's expectations. Now that might be a
Yeah.
burden for that person to carry, but there can be that quality, as we experience this person as someone that works really hard and cares very much and
Yeah.
try, all those kinds of things. So, it's a
Absolutely.
really interesting planetary dynamic, these two together. It really
I
is.
know. Yeah, because it can go yeah, I felt like there were so many, and of course it's true for so many of the aspects, but particularly this one, I was like, "Wow, there are a lot of different avenues for this aspect to show up," because I'm really glad you brought up the pleasing, quality too, and, like, a little bit of that people pleasing
Well, I
because
wanna be
we
safe. I wanna stay safe, and if I make
yeah,
someone mad, maybe there was
be
an
accepted.
experience, like, if it was a challenging,
Yeah.
upbringing, like, if I got in trouble in childhood, if I made someone mad. So, like, that's the work to, like, not want to
Yeah.
always do things for others, but there also can be that quality of dependability, like you had mentioned earlier with this person type of people, because there's
Yeah.
a desire to want to do things in the right way, and care that they
Yeah.
might really put into it. So, God, it's
Yeah.
so and I
It's
was
so nuanced.
things keep coming in and out, and they're
Yeah.
just coming out. Now I forgot, but yeah.
Oh, what's also interesting, and I won't take credit for this because this was in the research I was doing that I just to, like, kind of, freshen up on this aspect, was, that sometimes it shows up in, like, farming communities and families who've lived in places, like, generation after generation where maybe
Yes.
had right? They've had the same kind of job, vocation, it's been repeated in the same kind of community and locality, and so then that there's a story there, another way of, like,
Yeah,
am I having to stay at home? Can I branch out from home? Maybe I don't feel like I can, or maybe in so that's a whole thing
yeah,
too.
that's beautiful, a sense of maintaining the lineage and a sense of responsibility of having to carry that, maybe.
Yeah,
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 that's been maybe instilled from a young age, from childhood, and you've seen that, and you've seen generations in your family doing that, so there's that kind of a s
yeah,
that dynamic to contend with, so that's really
yeah,
interesting. So, thinking about the opposition and relationships, maybe
yeah,
someone who might have a Moon Saturn opposition might draw in, people that are older, or that fit that kind of father figure, or that seem like really well structured and has their stuff together, as a sense of like, maybe there's a sense of feeling safety or security in that. We might draw in the
good
Saturn, or
idea.
vice versa. Maybe if you're owning the Saturn part, maybe we draw in really nurturing people that can kind of help us find, or just get in
Yeah,
touch with our emotions a little bit more than we've maybe been able to do on our own.
yeah, absolutely. Oh god, yeah, and that could be oh, that's such an interesting one, and again, that, like, Capricorn Cancer axis is coming into play, and, like, maybe they're helping you, lean into yeah, like, really learning how to hold that emotional container because that's another word I've heard a lot with Saturn is container, having a container, you
Container.
know? Mhm.
Yes, and maybe I also was thinking, when it's working really well, maybe you end up being in a career, or or just somewhere in your life where you're someone that's able, because you understand the road that you've worked really hard on
Yeah.
holding emotions, or you've dealt with difficult emotions and you've worked on it. Maybe you then become the container where people feel safe to come to you,
Mm,
to open up, like a counselor or something,
absolutely.
and you're
Yeah,
holding that safe space for them in a structured way,
yeah,
where they can go, I know I can come here. It's a place where I feel safe to open up. So,
yeah.
there's all these beautiful things that can be mined
Mhm.
from this planetary dynamic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that structure and safety it's there. It can be worked with. Yeah.
Yes,
Ah,
definitely.
love
Well, that
it.
was just anything else, or do you think we
I don't
can?
think I have anything else at the moment. Do you?
No, I think, this was just an idea to get people kind of thinking about, when you look at your planetary dynamics and
Yeah.
how they might work together, there's so many more possibilities and ways they can work together. But just to get you thinking about it, like, what are these planets? What are they about? And how might they be interacting with each other? And when we start to see things not just within ourselves, but what we're drawing in, and maybe some of the things we're drawing in are less than pleasant. Well, maybe there's some lesson there. Instead of trying to push it away, push these people away, maybe there's something that they have to teach us about ourselves. And that's
Exactly.
always something to think about in general with these kind of planetary aspects. What are they trying to tell us about us and our own growth and development?
Yeah, those themes, those patterns that keep popping up in your life, I wouldn't be surprised if they're reflecting your aspects. And again, it's like they're trying to show you something. They're trying to work with you here. So if you're willing to kind of have that dialogue, aspects are a wonderful way to get into that.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yes.
love it.
Perfect, Kaya. Well,
Okay.
this was wonderful. And as always such a great conversation with you. And I am looking forward to the next one, but this was such a fun
Ew.
journey. So,
I know. I'm really glad we're doing this series. Aspects are so cool. And then please give us a 5-star rating and review. Make sure to follow the Astro Lounge pod on Instagram. You can find me at Kaya_Kaya_Kaya_Kaya_ astrology at Haya Kaya Astrology. How about you?
and you can find me on Instagram at the.cosmic wanderer, WONDERER. And my website is The Cosmic Wanderer altogether.
There we go.
So that's it.
Until next time.
To the next time.
Cosmic.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.